Indy cars, the fastest, most dangerous racing machines on Earth. GT sports cars, the fastest, most expensive road cars. These two extreme forms of racing are designed to push man and machine to the limits and beyond. These high-performance monsters are built for just one purpose: to beat the opposition. Every Indy car is hand-built, $500,000 worth of precision engineering. The rules make sure that each driver is given an equal amount of power. Every car has a turbocharged 2.65-liter V8 engine. We will follow two top young drivers from the Tasman IndyCar team, competing in the fastest race in the world, the Michigan 500. It's a race that will give one of these drivers the greatest triumph of his career. A month ahead of the Michigan race, the Tasman team privately tests their cars at the Road America racetrack. The team's two drivers are Brazilian André Ribeiro and Mexican Adrian Fernandez. 30-year-old Fernandez races in his national colors of red, white, and green.
Radio check, Adrian.
His car is managed by Diane Hall, the only woman race engineer in IndyCar. Her job is to make sure that Fernandez's car is set up perfectly for each different racetrack.
Diane, do we have new brakes or what?
Have new pads.
Initially, we're just trying to get the car sorted out because it's the first time we've been to this track this year. And from there on in, we'll start doing some suspension changes. We've got a few different geometries we want to try. Initially, it's just settle Adrian down, get a feel for the track.
It costs $7 million a year just to keep Fernandez's car on the road. He's in control of a 900 horsepower, 250-mile-an-hour missile, capable of accelerating from 0 to 100 in 3 seconds. That's 4 times faster than a high-performance sports car. And his brakes can slow him down from 180 to 80 miles an hour in less than 2 seconds. Fernandez is one of Mexico's greatest sports heroes. He started racing motorbikes when he was only 8 years old. He graduated to IndyCar in 1994, winning his first race in Toronto 2 years later.
The challenge of driving a racing car is the speed, the G-forces that you generate while cornering, braking, accelerating. I don't think there is anything like this.
His teammate, André Ribeiro, races in red, yellow, and blue. Ribeiro gave up law school to race go-karts when he was 19. He has won 2 IndyCar races.
To drive an IndyCar is to drive one of the most powerful cars in the world. To drive on the limit is to find the maximum capacity of your equipment. This is everything: tires, car, chassis, engine, and also yourself. So you explore this corner by corner, lap by lap.
In testing, the team experiments with the setup of the 2 cars to optimize grip around the corners and top speed down the straights. setup is a delicate balance between the aerodynamic shape, the suspension, and the choice of tires. The setup is different for every track. If the team gets it wrong, their drivers won't be competitive. The mechanics can adjust over 100 different settings on the car. Even a tiny change can affect lap times by a few vital hundredths of a second. It's a process of trial and error.
The whole process is not too analytically specific. It's rather crude, really. It's not a true laboratory environment that we deal with. You added some front wings or took some front wing out and lowered the front?
I added one turn
front wing.
and I went down half flat.
Important electronic data is collected from sensors on almost every component in the car. As the car speeds around the track, the data is transmitted back to the pits as a radio signal. The engineers only receive information. The race rules forbid them to electronically control the car. But they can give verbal advice and instructions to the driver over the radio.
Running 50 here for a while here. I have understeer in the medium to fast corner. I have a little bit of understeer that maybe we can fix a little bit.
But the most useful feedback comes from the drivers themselves.
Coming into the first corner, the car point's good, but just as I start turning, the pushes away. But the car dives very nice on the braking and turns good. The balance of the car, you feel different ways, but mainly you feel it with your body. Actually, the bottom of your body, what tells you what the car is doing.
You need to be one thing, machine and driver, one thing. You need to feel like you are part of the car.
The most critical elements of the car's setup are the aerodynamics. The wings on the front and rear of a racing car are like airplane wings, but they're upside down. Instead of creating lift, they produce the opposite, downforce. Without it, the car would fly off the track. To improve the performance of Ribeiro and Fernandez's cars, new aerodynamic designs are tested in a wind tunnel. The Tasman cars are developed and built by Lola Cars in England. They use scale models with built-in strain gauges to measure the downforce generated by different wing designs.
Downforce comes from the front wing, the rear wing, and the underbody of the car. So the more downforce we can get, the more that acts on the tyre, the faster you can go around the corner. Aircraft use wings to fly, and we use wings to stick cars to the track.
The team makes small changes to the model to try to find more downforce within the allowed limits of wing size.
Probably most of the gains nowadays in open-wheel formula are to be had on the front wing and on the underside of the car.
But the immense downforce and powerful road grip come at a high cost: drag. Drag slows the car down. It's the friction between the air and the car.
The drag on a racing car is probably about the same as that on a 40-ton truck. If you look at the front of a car, it's dominated by the tyres and by the wings. The wheels are a very draggy part of the car. They carry over half the drag of the car.
The designer's quest is to improve downforce without increasing drag. To detect any areas with high drag, ultraviolet fluorescent dyes are used to map the airflow across the wings.
Flow visualization is very useful for finding whether you have separated flow on wings or areas of the car which are generally carrying more drag than you would otherwise like. You really want these nice striations, good quality parallel flow. The top flow here looks pretty good actually. This area along here is not as good as it could be, so we'll have to try and tidy that up a little bit. But you can see The flow's pretty good. A little nurdle in here. Just sits here and rotates, and that's caused by this corner, and what we've got to try and do is to minimise that, because anything like that will ultimately cause drag on the car.
The end result is astounding. These cars produce so much downforce that at 120 miles an hour, they could drive along the top of a tunnel. On a smooth racetrack, the closer the cars are run to the ground, the more downforce they will produce. So to maximize grip, the engineers set the suspension to run as low as possible.
You lose significant amount of downforce on the car unless you are very close to the ground. And on a track like this track, going down the straight, we will be within a millimetre of being on the ground.
To keep the car within fractions of an inch of the road, race cars use extremely hard springs, front and rear, 10 times harder than a normal passenger car.
On a racing car, comfort is not really an issue. In fact, if the car is too comfortable, it is normally too slow.
But even with perfectly set up aerodynamics and suspension, there's no substitute for skillful driving.
There's a lot of small things that can make you a little bit faster. Where's the right point to brake and to turn? Can you touch the curb or not? Can you go a little bit off track or not? And sometimes, a few inches of the track can make you go faster.
The fastest way around most corners is to use the full width of the track to reduce the curve. Start wide, cut across the apex, and then wide again.
When you go around, first of all, you do the apex. So you cross the corner from one side to the other. You try to cut the angle of the corner a little bit.
Different drivers use different techniques to get around the same corner. At turn 5 on this track, Fernandez saves time by braking hard at the last possible moment.
You have to approach the corner with a very late braking because it's so slow. The corner is so sharp that there is no way you can put the power so early.
Teammate Ribeiro uses a different driving technique. He brakes more gently, 150 yards earlier, and drives around the apex 5 miles an hour faster. Both drivers negotiate the corner in exactly the same overall time. Throughout the IndyCar race season, Fernandez and Ribeiro must adapt their driving techniques to different types of circuits. Bumpy, slippery street circuits, such as Detroit or Toronto. Crowded, short ovals, such as Rio or Loudon. And banked superspeedways, such as Michigan. But most circuits have one thing in common. They're surrounded by a reinforced concrete wall.
We always say in IndyCar there is two types of drivers. The ones that has hit the wall and the ones that they are going to hit it. Eventually you will hit the wall.
In high-speed impacts, these cars are designed to self-destruct. The only way to give the drivers a chance of living through one of these crashes is to let the car absorb as much of the impact as possible. English driver Mark Blundell walked away from this smash. He survived because at the heart of every Indy car is an incredibly strong monocoque shell.
The monocoque is designed so that it remains intact predominantly after an impact. The nose cone on the front will absorb most of the impact. The side pods would absorb side impact. There's quite a lot of structure around the chassis, but obviously on a super speedway, 200 plus miles an hour, that sort of pales into insignificance.
The body shell is built from carbon fiber composites, the strongest materials ever devised. The material is applied in several layers of different strengths, thicknesses, and weaves, cut to the designer's templates. Impact-absorbent aluminum honeycomb is sandwiched between the layers. In the mold, small pieces of composite help support potential weak points. The components are shrink-wrapped and sent to the autoclave, a giant oven which bonds the layers at high temperatures and pressure. The finished car body is 5 times stronger than the same thickness of metal. The new body shell must pass rigorous IndyCar regulation impact tests. The heavy sled is rigged with sensors, which will measure G-force during the impact.
3, 2, 1, fire.
The G-forces must remain within safe human limits. But just how much can the human body tolerate? Military pilots train at up to 9 Gs. People can survive much higher G-forces, but only for a tiny fraction of a second. The impact force in this test exceeds an incredible 40 Gs, but for less than 10 milliseconds. A driver would be unconscious, but he would be alive. Good news for Ribeiro and Fernandez, because these are the monocoques that will protect them during the world's fastest race. It's 2 days before the Michigan 500, and the time has come for Andre Ribeiro to test his skill and courage on this super speedway.
Super speedway is probably the most challenging thing for a racing driver because you go to speeds close to 240, 250 miles an hour. You go to a turn without lifting, so it's full throttle all the time. It's unbelievable.
The Michigan International Speedway hosts the fastest race of the IndyCar series. The race is 500 miles long, 3.5 hours of nerve-wracking super speed endurance. The challenge of super speedway racing requires a radically different car setup. The Tasman team tries to set up Ribeiro and Fernandez's cars to run at full speed in top gear all the way around the track.
You need to run in 6. That's the gear that it will be about 240 miles an hour. 6 is what you qualified in last time.
At such high speeds, the cars can get the downforce and the grip they need with much smaller wings. The priority for this track is to maximize top speed and to minimize the drag. Ultimately, it's up to Ribeiro and Fernandez to decide how much grip each of them is prepared to sacrifice in their quest for speed.
Andre, go to mixture 4, please. Mixture 4.
It's a compromise at Michigan between having a very, very quick car and a very, very stable car. So you have to make sure that you have the least amount of drag in the car, but the driver still has confidence, still has enough downforce to be able to negotiate the 4 corners.
Even with small wings, at over 230 miles an hour, the car punches a massive hole through the air. This can be put to great advantage if you follow in the slipstream of another car. This technique is called drafting, and all the drivers use it to gain a few more miles per hour.
If a racing car comes to within 250 to 300 yards behind the car in front, it will pick up basically what is a hole in the air in front, and it pulls it along. And so you can pick up to 8 or 9 miles an hour behind a car in front.
It's a big difference. I mean, it's a big, big, big difference, and you can feel it. You can feel when you go behind somebody, you can feel how the car suddenly starts to accelerate more. It's like having an extra power on the car.
One of the most crucial tactical decisions the team will have to make before the race is whether to use hard or soft tire rubber. Even the hardest tire is 10 times softer than a tire on a normal passenger car. These tires provide unbelievable grip, almost melting onto the track as they reach temperatures of 180 degrees.
Heat resistance is a key thing we look at here to run sustained speeds of over 230 miles an hour, lap after lap after lap. It's very demanding on the tire. So these are some of the hardest compounds and most durable tires that we see anywhere on the entire IndyCar circuit.
Firestone provides 1,500 tires at Michigan. The rules allow each car 15 sets of tires for practice, qualifying, and the race itself. These tires cost $300 each, and they're specially designed for superspeedway racing. They must give the drivers just the right amount of control.
The sidewall of the tire between the bead and the tread surface is what gives the driver the steering input or the feel. And if the sidewall is too stiff, the driver turns the wheel and the car will turn too quickly to create an uneasy effect. And on the other hand, if the sidewall is too soft or too flexible, the driver gets a vague feel. He starts to turn the wheel and doesn't feel secure.
On oval tracks and superspeedways, the steering is set up for the corners and not the straights. In theory, the drivers can take the corners with no hands on the wheel. The car is constantly turning left, so slightly larger tires are fitted to the right-hand side of the car. This type of setup is known as stagger.
Stagger is basically the difference in the size between the right rear and the left rear. And as you're only turning left, if you think of a paper cup rolling on the ground, the cup is going to roll left from the large side on the right. So that helps the driver turn into the corner, because basically that's all you're doing here.
The first day's practice is a success for the Tasman team. Andre Ribeiro sets an unofficial lap record, completing the 2-mile circuit in just 30 seconds with an average speed of 240 miles per hour. That's half the speed of a commercial jet plane.
Looks very good. We are very fast. I would say faster than we were last time here. But of course, right now it's difficult to judge because we don't know what the others are doing, if they are using full or empty tanks, if they did those times on tow behind somebody or not. So there's a lot of things to play still. And right now, it's better not to look too much for the times and concentrate on our car.
At a high-speed circuit like this, the most important factor of all is power. The rival teams push their engines to the brink of self-destruction. This is the inside of a race engine. The exact figures are closely guarded secrets, but IndyCar engines pound out about 900 horsepower, 9 times more than a similar-sized passenger car engine. The only way of generating such awesome power from such a small engine is to use a turbocharger to force-feed its cylinders with air. The principle is similar to that of a jet engine. A turbine system sucks in cold air. It builds up high pressure above the cylinders. This is called the boost pressure.
One of the things we want to try to do is to maximize our boost. CART stipulates at this race that we can have a maximum of 40 inches of boost. So when Adrian goes to full throttle, we want to be able to have 40 inches of boost at his disposal. 1 inch of boost can be anywhere from 15 to 20 horsepower. Half an inch of boost down, and you can be off by as much as 10 horsepower.
With the top 20 cars separated by less than a second a lap, that 10 horsepower can mean the difference between being first or last. Amazingly, these cars could go even faster than 250 miles per hour if they were allowed to have unlimited boost pressure. But to help keep speeds relatively safe, each engine is fitted with a pop-off valve to restrict maximum boost. The valves are carefully calibrated by a race official. They're designed to pop open if the driver uses too much boost. If he does, the valve opens and his engine loses power for several vital seconds. To prevent tampering, the pop-off valves are securely locked away until minutes before each session begins. They're fitted and sealed under the watchful eyes of a race official. An air tube from the valve to the driver's ear allows him to hear a hiss just before it's about to pop, so he can ride the boost as close as he dares without blowing the valve. In the all-important qualifying session, Ribeiro races against the clock for 2 laps to determine his starting position on the grid.
Qualifying lap, you are basically looking for speed, and that's it. You have very low fuel, you have optimum pressure on the tire, you have as less wing as you can, so you just have to find the perfect way to go around the corner, the perfect apex, the way that you don't scrub speed.
2.9 done.
So the car has to flow into the corner.
Yeah, 219.
Ribeiro is disappointed with his time. A little too much downforce on the car has restricted his speed. The Tasman team reacts by decreasing the downforce on the wings of Fernandez's car. If they set up the car right, Fernandez will be able to go at top speed all the way around the track on his 2 laps. This takes great nerve. Fernandez holds the accelerator down with both feet to make sure that he doesn't slow up. He clocks a very fast time.
The car has been consistent, and that's important for us for the race. So I think if we start in the top 2 rows, even the 3rd row, I think we will be in good shape.
Fernandez has qualified 5th and Ribeiro 8th. Overnight, the team completely rebuilds both cars for tomorrow's race. These engines are designed to run for just 500 miles. They have to be replaced before every race. No one goes to bed until every tiny detail is ready for the race. "25 cars line up for the start of the Michigan 500. Adrian Fernandez is on the 2nd row. Andre Ribeiro is on the 3rd row. All the cars go out for 2 warm-up laps to bring the cold tires up to race temperature.
It's 500 miles, it's like a marathon for us. With the G that we carry on those corners for 3 or 4 hours, it's very tough. It's a very challenging place because it's not only how fast you can go, but how far you can go.
A rolling start, and the race is on. On the very first lap, former IndyCar and Formula One world champion Emerson Fittipaldi hits another car and veers into the wall. His injuries are serious. He may never race again. To avoid the debris, Ribeiro had to lock his brakes and has ruined his left front tire.
Left front tire. It's flat spot.
The race is suspended, and Ribeiro immediately makes a pit stop. A single tire change, a fuel top-off, and he rejoins the track.
Good call on that left front on right.
But under new rules, any driver making a pit stop while the race is suspended is penalized. Ribeiro is forced to drop back to 24th place at the end of the line.
On right, you're going to have to go back. They're insisting. Why? What is the reason that I have to go back? Right, now calm down, all right? From here, you know you can win it.
After the race resumes, with one of the fastest machines on the track, Ribeiro begins to carve his way back up through the field. But it's vitally important that he doesn't push his car too hard.
One of the things I got to do is a bit like a racehorse. I got to slow the guy down, actually. Make sure he doesn't get too excited. You don't have to lead every lap here. It's very, very hard on the engines and the wheel bearings and the transmission because they're running at maximum RPM, maximum speed all the time. So you've got to stay in the hunt, stay in the lead group, but also be able to breathe the equipment, breathe the engine as much as possible.
Ribeiro makes excellent progress. After 70 laps, he's fought his way back to 6th place. Both Ribeiro and Fernandez come in together for their second scheduled pit stop. The team adds more downforce to Ribeiro's wings. As well as filling the cars with 40 gallons of fuel and changing the tires, Fernandez makes a critical error. He tries to pull away too quickly on his fresh, cold tires and spins his car. "40 laps later, Ribeiro completes his comeback, moving into 2nd place and pushing Alex Zanardi for the lead. Under pressure from Ribeiro, Zanardi loses control and hits the concrete barrier at over 200 miles an hour. A loose tire from Zanardi's car narrowly misses Ribeiro, but he takes the lead.
Okay, good job. Good job. Nice and comfortable.
Despite his earlier pit lane problem, Fernandez is now lapping faster than any other car. He's managed to catch up, and he moves into 2nd place behind his teammate. With 80 laps left to go, both Tasman cars make pit stops. Ribeiro makes a clean getaway, but disaster strikes for Fernandez. His clutch suddenly breaks, and there's no way his team can fix it in the pit lane.
We're going to take the engine cover off here. To me, it seems like it's a clutch, because it'll go into gear, but it won't drive.
His race is over.
To be able to make an adjustment and really battle for the lead, but we had a problem with the clutch, I believe. It was unfortunately because the team was doing a great job, and these ones hurt because when you're in front, but there is plenty more to come, and that's the important thing,
We told Adrian to back off because he had just done a 2:34 lap and he was completely in control. He was actually going quicker than Andre at that moment in time. And we wanted to have our drivers basically with 20 laps to go to be able to race. Unfortunately, Adrian's not going to be able to race. That's the luck of the draw.
As the race continues, another bad crash puts Parker Johnston of the Brix Comtech team out. With just half an hour left to go, only 17 out of 25 cars are left on the track.
P1 plus 2.5 through it. 30 more laps, looking good. Explorers.
Watched by his teammates in the pits, Ribeiro remains in the lead. Finally, after 3.5 hours of intense driving, Ribeiro takes the checkered flag.
Well done, guys. Good one, Andre.
It's his 3rd IndyCar victory.
Thank you very much. Andre, awesome. This way.
Well, it was tremendous. This is teamwork, and he dropped back to the end of the line with Emerson Fittipaldi's accident when he got a flat spotted tyre. But he got his way back to the front and some great pit stops by the guys, and really right at the end there was a shootout in the pits between Andre and Scott Pruitt, and our guys won.
It was a tough race, but it's an incredible good feeling. It's fantastic.
Ribeiro has achieved the impossible. He fought his way back from last position to win the world's fastest race. You don't have to be an IndyCar driver to drive fast. This is the McLaren F1. With a top speed of 235 miles an hour, it's the world's fastest road car, and it costs $1 million. The racing version of the McLaren F1 won the Le Mans 24-hour race at its first attempt. This supreme piece of engineering dominates the GT Global Endurance Race Series. Cars from every top mark, Ferrari, Porsche, Jaguar, Lotus, and McLaren compete in 4-hour endurance races on international Grand Prix circuits. This type of racing is the proving ground of the world's finest sports cars. The McLaren is the car to beat. This is a crucial race weekend for the Gulf GTC McLaren team at the Andersdorp circuit in Sweden. The two-car team defends a narrow World Championship lead.
Can we have 20 litres, please? Straight in, John. This is only a driver change, okay?
Andersdorp is a winding 2.5-mile Grand Prix circuit built around an airstrip in the middle of the Swedish countryside. At the end of the main straight, the top cars reach 175 miles per hour with an average lap speed of 100 miles per hour. There are several extremely long, slightly banked corners. For these heavy, powerful road cars, it is a tough survival test. The team used their practice time to find the optimum setup for endurance as well as pure speed. The cars will need both for victory.
This is a very long banked corner where the car has understeer. You can see the steering's constantly being readjusted depending on the throttle opening. Here we're going into a left-hand corner. We have softer tyres on the right, so there's better grip on this corner. And you'll see there's less correction on the wheel. And it comes out just neatly onto the curb there. Accelerating up, back into fourth, down into third. Tight line, car understeers a bit towards the outside, just missed the outside circuit. And this is a very long, important corner where the car really puts the stress into the left-hand tyre, held up by some Porsche. And here you come off the camber, turn sharp left, very, very slow corner, and that's the end of the lap.
The car's amazing power is produced by a 6-liter, 600-horsepower engine.
The engine is absolutely sensational. It's the best engine I've ever driven. It's a BMW V12, and it's as smooth as silk. And when you push the throttle down, it feels a bit like a train pulling out of a station.
But the race engine provides more than raw power. It's a critical part of the car's handling. When the car is on the limit with the tires sliding, the drivers control the slide with the throttle as much as the steering. The trade-off for such a powerful, responsive engine is its sheer weight and size.
When you get the car sliding, the engine always feels like it's trying to overtake you, and that's the limiting factor as to how hard you can really push.
It can accelerate from 0 to 100 in 6 seconds, but it can brake even quicker. At the end of the main straight at Andersdorp, The McLarens decelerate from 175 to 50 miles per hour in 2 seconds, thanks to super-efficient carbon fiber brakes. As the practice session progresses, the team becomes concerned about their tire performance. The tires are designed to last 40 laps, but are wearing thin after just 10.
To make the car work, we need to make the tyres work properly. So all our work is involved around trying to make the tyres work in a long radius corner. And it's proving quite hard to do.
The result is the drivers are having problems with understeer in the long corners. Understeer is a lack of grip on the front tires. To stay on the track, the drivers must work the steering much harder to get enough grip.
It's really just trying to get the front tyres to live. Because the corners are so long, if you have an understeer, it slides the tyre very aggressively and overheats it. So we've got to get the understeer out of the car so the tyre will work properly.
The way to improve the tire grip is to change the suspension setup. The problem is, the suspension system was originally designed for normal roads and not for racetracks. The team has been trying to solve the problem with a rig that simulates racetrack conditions with hydraulic pillars under each of the 4 wheels.
The problems we're trying to deal with are the fact that the car is quite a heavy car, so we need to be quite stiffly sprung to support the car and keep the car stable. But we also need to not compromise the handling package and the ride quality too much also.
The heart of the problem is that the car's suspension components were designed to run on normal roads with a ground clearance of 3 to 4 inches. But to create enough downforce at race speeds, the suspension has been adapted to run much closer to the ground. To improve the handling at low ride heights, GTC has developed and fitted new shock absorbers. Throughout the practice day, the team experiments with different settings on the new shocks. Soft spring settings improve the tire wear, but unfortunately, they also produce slow lap times.
Rebound is the question I'm asking myself. I wouldn't mind just taking some rebound off the rear and putting another sweep on the front, because I'm sure that's the way it wants to go.
By the end of the day, the team seems to be in a no-win situation. The car's either too slow or it destroys the tires.
We'd set these shock absorbers up with settings that we thought were going to be correct here. And it seems, unfortunately, we probably didn't get the settings right. For tomorrow, we shall be back on our old shock absorbers with all our sort of known settings.
Qualification for the grid positions for the Anderstorp GT Global Endurance Race takes place over 2 45-minute sessions. For the first few laps of the day, the drivers warm up on normal race tires. Then they make pit stops, and the cars are fitted with special, extra soft qualifying tires. These tires will last just 2 laps, but the extra grip reduces the lap time by as much as 2 seconds. Each car gets 1 set of qualifying tires to try to set the fastest lap. For the drivers, it's a few minutes of intense concentration as they try to force every last scrap of performance out of the car.
You've got to be very aggressive to get the car going fast enough, but when you're going, say, within a second of what the car will do, all of a sudden you've got to be very, very smooth.
James Weaver's early run is fast, good enough to qualify 4th on the grid.
Is that it for the qualifiers, James? It's 29.32, which at the moment is P1.
Teammate Pierre-Henri Raffanel finds an extra 0.4 of a second and grabs 2nd place on the grid.
Okay, it's a good job, well done.
2 of the Ferraris qualify in pole and 3rd position. They are the McLaren's strongest opponents. After qualifying, the engineers make the final decisions on the setup, and the cars are prepared for the race. Weaver and Bellem take the opportunity to compare notes on difficult sections of the track.
Curve here. I get as close to it as I can. I get to about here and then start trying to work my way down. On old tyres, I can get up to, I can probably get just past the end of this wall before I brake. Bump's least bad here. I go down here. Yeah. Look at this here. There's a hell of a bump there. Yeah, when you hit the first bump, that's where it all locks up, isn't it?
The Gulf GTC cars take their place on the grid for the start of the race. In the 4 hours and over 150 laps ahead, each car will have to stop for fresh tires and fuel at least 3 times. Like IndyCar races, it's a rolling start, and the 2 Ferraris lead into the first corner. The Gulf GTC cars slip back into 4th and 5th, boxed in behind a slower Lotus. In 4th, Raffanel's best chance to pass the Lotus is at the end of the main straight. He uses the superior power of the McLaren's engine to tuck in behind the Lotus, and then outbrakes it into the corner. The fuel-hungry Ferraris are first in for pit stops. The McLarens will need one less stop than the Ferraris. Their first stop comes after 39 laps. With 22 gallons of fuel, a driver change, and a fresh set of tires, a good pit stop here takes 50 seconds. On lap 42, one of the Gulf GTC car's windshields is cracked when a large lump of rubber is thrown up from the track. More serious damage is sustained by the McLaren of the Harrods team. The Harrods car loses 4 laps in the pits, and one of GTC's main rivals is out of contention. As the race progresses, drivers fatigue and their machines begin to wear out. The leading Ferrari drops out. The Gulf GTC cars move up to 2nd and 3rd, and are now challenging the remaining Ferrari for the lead. But the Bellem-Weaver car develops a brake problem, and it drops 3 laps behind as the engineers try to fix the problem in the pits. With 1 hour left, it's up to Rafanel to challenge the Ferrari for victory. He's 1 lap behind, but lapping much faster.
1 lap to Ferrari. Yeah, 1 lap to Ferrari.
Rafanel gives it everything he's got. But the gap is too large. The Ferrari takes the checkered flag, with Rafanel 30 seconds behind.
Bloody good drive, well done. Looks pretty good for the points.
GTC have to be content with 2nd and 3rd place on the podium. But they have won valuable championship points. They will go on to become the 1996 world champions. Impossibly fast, incredibly powerful. Pushing man and machine to the limits of safety and endurance. These are the cars that break all the rules.